Tonight, a dramatic political reset and the first full day of the Kamala Harris campaign. More high-profile endorsements, the record multi-million-dollar fundraising haul after 24 hours.
It is my intention to go out and earn this nomination and to win.
And the call-in pledge from a president to her team.
I'm still going to be fully engaged.
Plus, the vice president's Canadian connections. The U.S. Secret Service boss and the congressional crosshairs over security lapses ahead of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Hundreds of wildfires rage in Western Canada. Evacuation and air quality alerts.
It's tough. It's like an emotional roller coaster.
The growing global tally and new revelations about a former Ontario chef already facing murder charges for selling poisonous substances. And Canadian Olympic couture in Paris.
They look like $1 million when they walk into the stadium.
Style meets sports in one of the fashion capitals of the world. The countdown is on.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. We begin again tonight with the extraordinary political pivot in the United States and the woman now taking her place as the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination. Vice President Kamala Harris cheered on by supporters on the first full day of her campaign. Late today, President Joe Biden, recovering from COVID, calling the team to rally behind Harris.
I won't be on the ticket, but I'm still going to be fully engaged.
Since Biden dropped out yesterday, Harris's team says she's raised more than $81 million, the largest 24-hour sum reported by either side in the 2024 campaign. And now the urgent push to name a running mate. On the short list, California Governor Gavin Newsom, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Other possibilities, Democrats who could help in key battlegrounds. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Arizona's Mark Kelly, and North Carolina's Roy Cooper. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin on today's high-profile endorsement and what's next.
Surrounded by student athletes, Kamala Harris is running her own race, quickly becoming the one to beat for the Democratic presidential nomination. After Joe Biden stepped down from his troubled re-election bid, Harris praised the president.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history.
Democrats are falling in line, consolidating around Harris.
We're very excited about praising his legacy and electing Kamala Harris.
Endorsed by former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the Clintons, and top Democratic leaders.
She is well equipped to prosecute, I'm going to emphasize, to prosecute the case against Donald Trump.
Nearly every potential challenger and possible running mates in battleground states are now throwing their support behind Harris.
The vice president is smart and strong, which will make her a good president.
And I'm excited about it and feel confident that she can win this presidency because she has to.
The former California senator, prosecutor, and possible president meeting with her new campaign staff.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
President Biden at home with COVID, phoning in to his emotional staff.
I'm hoping you'll give every bit of your heart and soul that you gave to me to Kamala.
This race no longer a rematch between two old men, Donald Trump at 78, complaining on Truth Social. Now we have to start all over again. His campaign pivoting with new attack ads, blaming Harris for covering up Biden's decline and linking her to what Republicans call the administration's failures.
A border invasion, runaway inflation, the American dream dead.
After weeks of Democratic infighting, this is a whole new presidential campaign. Harris hopes to lock up the nomination as soon as this week, and there's no time to waste. Democrats have a virtual roll call naming their presidential and vice presidential pick in just 10 days. Omar?
All right, Joy Malbin in Washington, thanks. The Republicans are also going through a reset, the House Speaker demanding Biden immediately step down.
The president should resign. The reason is, if everyone acknowledges that he is incapable of running a campaign, then he's clearly incapable of running the country. I mean, he has the nuclear codes.
With Biden now out of the race, Trump becomes the oldest candidate. Today, his running mate, J.D. Vance, had this to say about a likely debate showdown.
I was told I was going to get to debate Kamala Harris, and now President Trump's going to get to debate her. I'm kind of pissed off about that.
And there was more reaction on this side of the border today on the impact of an official Harris Democratic nomination and a possible victory come November. CTV's Michael Couture on Harris's Canadian connections and what it could mean for the relationship between both countries going forward.
It was a staged photo op of Vice President Kamala Harris and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in November of 2021. But as the conversation continued, it turned into a candid moment between two politicians and tight-knit allies. It's a closeness Liberals hope will continue if Harris becomes the Democratic nominee.
It's always been very constructive, someone who understands the importance of the relationship, and I would say the strategic nature. You know, we're just not nice people up there. We're strategic.
And the Liberals are being strategic, knowing a lot could change between now and the Democratic convention, where Harris could be anointed her party's nominee. Having spent part of her teenage years in Montreal, Harris knows Canada perhaps a little more than other U.S. politicians. And her record has impressed NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
We know that Vice President Kamala Harris is someone that has fought against the big banks, taken the side of working people, and has showed a real commitment to values that we share, values of defending everyday folks.
Hailing from California, Harris has been a fierce opponent of pipelines like Keystone XL, which could have sent Canadian energy through the U.S. She's also criticized the renegotiated NAFTA, saying it didn't do enough to protect the environment.
Kamala Harris as president would be great for Canada.
Democrats living outside of the U.S. have been reinvigorated in the last 24 hours. With senior members of the party pledging their support to Harris, donations have also picked up. And they hope this newfound energy will maintain for the next 4 months.
We just got to ride that to Election Day and make sure that everybody who does have the ability to vote gets out and votes.
Despite that, the Liberals say they'll continue the Team Canada charm offensive south of the border, knowing a lot can change between now and the U.S. election in November. Omar.
All right, Mike, thanks. The head of the U.S. Secret Service resisted new calls to resign today after a bipartisan grilling into the security lapses leading up to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Here's CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on her testimony.
Take a look at what happened.
This stunning moment is what the Secret Service calls its most significant operational failure in decades.
We must learn what happened, and I will move heaven and earth to ensure that an incident like July 13th does not happen again.
What happened before and after the assassination attempt that the Secret Service director today called preventable, the subject of a fiery congressional hearing.
You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
During hours of testimony, frustrated lawmakers repeatedly called for the resignation of Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle.
If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign.
You need to resign because this is absolutely unacceptable and you've lost the trust of the American people.
But Cheadle is refusing to resign. And if you ask many Republican lawmakers, refusing to answer key questions about what went wrong on July 13th.
You want to keep your job, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. The best way to keep your job is to answer the questions.
The shooter gained access to an unsecured roof with a line of sight to the stage roughly 150 meters away. But the Secret Service had nobody there. The roof and building were deemed outside their secure zone.
Can you answer why the Secret Service didn't place a single agent on the roof?
We are still looking into the advanced process.
The Secret Service confirms shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks was identified as a suspicious person during the rally. But for reasons now under investigation, the 20-year-old was not deemed a threat.
Why was he allowed to take the stage with a suspicious person having been identified in the crowd?
If the detail had been past information that there was a threat, the detail would never have brought the former president out onto stage.
The Secret Service says it was notified between 2 and 5 times about a suspicious person on the day of the Butler rally. The agency, Omar, is now looking into what happened with that information.
All right, Annie, thank you. 2 Alberta men have been charged, accused of posting threats to kill Prime Minister Justin Trudeau online. It's alleged one of the men also threatened Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. RCMP acknowledged the evolving security environment for public figures, saying, quote, "We recognize this is a time for increased vigilance." There is also increased vigilance stemming from another threat in Western Canada tonight. Wildfires. A community that returned home is now ready to evacuate again in BC. Thousands of lightning strikes have sparked new fires, and also under threat, a historic gold rush town. Here's CTV's Penny Daflos.
It's a rare and chilling sight, but Williams Lake residents saw the Herculean efforts above their homes to save them from flames.
It's hard to explain, my friend, what was going through my mind.
Strong wind brought a tree down on a power line Sunday, sparking a fierce fire on the edge of the city, a stone's throw from homes.
Devastating is the only word I can think about when I see that. In 50 years, my residence in this community, I've never seen any fire that aggressive.
Remarkably, no one was hurt, and while there have been more flare-ups,
boys are on it again.
Aerial firefighter crews have been hitting them hard, and the River Valley wildfire stands at 40 hectares. It's a very different story due south in the Fraser Canyon, where the Shetland Creek wildfire grew by a third to 20,000 hectares and has shut down a 50-kilometer stretch of the Trans-Canada Highway, with flames almost licking the roadside.
Worst case scenario, town has to be evacuated and we go into a full firefight.
The town of Ashcroft has evacuated a few more residents, with most of the community now on alert.
It's been very stressful. This is our third major fire since 2017. It's tough. It's like an emotional roller coaster.
Those already forced from their homes are finding strength in community while very aware of the tinder-dry conditions.
As we left, looking behind, it was just flames everywhere.
We could safely say that, we're entering into the core of wildfire season.
More than 330 fires are now burning across British Columbia, straining resources. 1,000 firefighters are on the ground, with 170 aircraft flying air support. Widespread lightning storms in the forecast are further complicating the firefight.
Things like tree stability, fire behavior, as well as maybe downpours that could be affecting some of those remote roads that we use.
All eyes are on the sky.
Please pray for us
to see what Mother Nature will throw at us next. Penny Daflos, CTV News, Vancouver.
In northern Alberta, thousands of residents have been forced to flee their homes as communities battle a cluster of wildfires threatening the area.
It was like an apocalypse or something. Like it was an eerie feeling.
About 170 wildfires are burning across Alberta right now, including more than 50 considered out of control. The province says the situation could get worse. Air quality alerts have been issued from BC to Saskatchewan as fires push thick smoke into the air. And on the East Coast, Labrador City residents are returning home after a wildfire forced an evacuation last week of about 7,000 people. Essential workers and their families started to return over the weekend. An Ontario court has ordered Canadian National Railway Company to pay $8 million. The fine is related to 2 derailments nearly a decade ago that released more than 3.6 million litres of crude into the environment in northern Ontario. Investigators say the railway failed to maintain the tracks. CN says it accepts responsibility. Chilling new details tonight on the international investigation into an Ontario chef accused of murder. CTV News has learned at least 4 people in New Zealand may have died by suicide after ordering poisonous substances from him. CTV's John Woodward has the story.
Kenneth Law was a chef by day at Toronto's Royal York Hotel. But in his off hours, he's accused of selling poisonous products directed at those who wished to die by suicide. In Canada, police have charged him with 14 counts of murder for deaths across Ontario. Now, New Zealand's coroner's office has revealed 4 deaths of people who ordered Law's products online. 2 students aged 18 and 21, another 21-year-old, and a 40-year-old DJ and personal trainer ordered Law's products after visiting websites and discussion forums associated with Kenneth Law between 2021 and 2023, the coroner's reports say. Mr. Law lives in Canada. His activities are outside the jurisdiction of the New Zealand courts. But authorities there had ruled some sites objectionable and moved to block access. There's no legal mechanism to do that in Canada, though the federal government has introduced the Online Harms Act, which would prohibit content that encourages young people to harm themselves.
As a parent, it literally terrifies me that the most dangerous toys in my home, my children's screens, are not subject to any safety standards right now.
Family members of the dead, including the brother of Gary Cooper, have called for more action, especially on suicide discussion forums.
Not next month, not next year. They need to be stopped now.
Law has denied the charges and says he's not responsible for what people do with his products. He's expected to face trial next year. Worldwide, the number of deaths attributed to Law's products have risen to 129, according to a tally by CTV News, a tally that climbed again after today. John Woodward, CTV News.
Global Affairs Canada says it's trying to get more information from Israeli authorities after a Canadian man was shot dead by the country's security forces. Officers opened fire after the man allegedly threatened them with a knife 300 meters north of the Gaza border. And Israel has declared 2 more hostages held by Hamas in Gaza dead days before ceasefire talks are set to resume. The country's military says it is investigating the deaths of Alex Danzig and Yagev Bukshav. They were both abducted from their homes on October 7th. The announcement increases pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire deal in return for the 120 hostages still held in Gaza. He is set to address a joint meeting of the U.S. Congress in Washington on Wednesday. Coming up, using sophisticated technology to tackle a pest, plus straight off the runway to the sports field, going to the Olympics in style. There's a new tool being used in Atlantic Canada to fight a summer pest: drones to map out specific areas. A novel approach that's also set to be better for the environment. Here's CTV's Sarah Plowman.
They're on a mission against the masses. Outnumbered by a long shot. Crews are calling in a new tool in the mosquito fight: drones.
What we're really trying to do is just minimize the impact of the mosquitoes in these built-up areas.
They now have 2. One's job is to map out the marshes, flagging standing water where mosquitoes breed. The larger drone will target those areas and spray a larvicide.
It's fully autonomous, so I'm really there just for emergency scenarios.
Today's wind grounded the larger of the drones, but controlling mosquitoes this way is expected to be better for the environment. Instead of trudging through the marshes in all-terrain vehicles, they can fly and spray with precision.
With the drone, there's no limitation in terms of the terrain where you can and can't go.
The larvicide is a naturally occurring bacteria found in soils. It only affects biting flies.
Targeted way of going after those mosquitoes without wiping out all the other insects that give us all those benefits, without wiping out nature.
While the mission is to combat a nuisance, as mosquito-borne diseases creep farther north, a more effective control program could have public health benefits.
With climate change and shifting climate patterns, it's certainly something that we're maybe not as well insulated from as we'd like to think we are.
Today would have been the team's first chance to spray the larvicide from that large drone had it not been so windy. They're anxious to get it out and see how well it works. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Moncton.
Still ahead.
I mean, I don't think they're in the finals that they were cheering for me, but you know, that's okay.
Bringing hockey glory to Alberta. The Oilers may have lost out on the Stanley Cup, but the coveted trophy did make it to Edmonton today. NHL player Josh Mahura brought the cup to the rink where he grew up playing hockey. The 26-year-old was the defenseman for the Florida Panthers when they won the final against the Oilers last month.
I mean, I don't think they're in the finals that they were cheering for me, but you know, that's okay. And like you said, just to be able to bring it back here regardless of all that. I know when I was a kid, it would have been so special.
He has since signed with the Seattle Kraken. And after the heartbreaking loss for her home team, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith seems to have made good on a bet with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Well, I just received 2 bottles of Canadian whiskey, 1 maple whiskey, 1 rye whiskey from Alberta Premier.
Both politicians had a friendly wager riding on the outcome of the final last month. If the Panthers had lost, DeSantis would have owed Smith a bottle of Florida rum and key lime pie. And Calgary has unveiled the design for its new event center, home to the Flames and the WHL team, the Hitmen.
And once the revitalization is complete, Calgary will be giving every major city in North America a run for its money.
$1.2 billion project is expected to open August 2026. After the break.
The women's are a bit more like brighter and in your face and not as subtle as I prefer my wardrobe to be.
A glimpse into Team Canada's new look for the Paris Games. Well, the runways of Paris are used to high fashion, but it won't just be models sporting new looks. It will also be athletes. Team Canada will be competing in style when the Games open in a matter of days. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth shows us Canada's new look.
For the second straight Olympics, Lululemon is outfitting Canadian Olympians in style and color. Athletes attempting to reach the podium in Paris are even getting hats, bags, and sneakers. This Lulu shopper mostly likes what she sees.
As the women's are a bit more like brighter and in your face and not as subtle as I prefer my wardrobe to be.
Ralph Lauren has been the official outfitter for Team USA since 2008.
The goal is to break a world record.
This year, they've deployed a classic prep school look.
And I'm sure there's a lot of athlete input in terms of wanting to look good.
The Americans will be decked out in jeans, sport coats, and pullovers. There's also buzz surrounding the Mongolian athletes, who will wear traditional clothing at the opening ceremony. With huge audiences watching the Olympics all around the world and exposure on social media, the marketing upside for these companies supplying the clothing is enormous. Halifax Wanderers soccer team president Derek Martin is in the business of using team gear to generate excitement for athletes.
You look at an example like us with Macron, who came on board to support the Canadian Premier League and all of our teams.
That company used soccer to launch its brand in Canada. Martin says the global business possibilities for Lululemon and Ralph Lauren will be on a much grander scale.
And maybe some markets that they currently aren't launched in or that they want to do much better in.
Canadian athletes will also wear Lululemon gear and clothing at the Paralympics in late August. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
And that opening ceremony will be on Friday. That's a snapshot of this Monday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.